Hello and welcome to Who's On Next, the podcast where we talk in depth about the film Jack and Jill. Today, my guest is known for his analytical animation-themed videos on his channel, as well as his many collaborations with people like Tomska. It is Eddie Bowley, a.k.a. Eddache.
Hello, hello, hello.
And how are you doing today?
I am doing all right. I'm currently fighting a big old beard here. It's been a long lockdown, and I don't know quite why I kind of usually I keep my beard pretty trim, pretty neat. But I don't know, it was maybe partly experiment or partly letting my standards slide. But I've just been letting it grow out a bit, and it's gotten quite very. Let's put it that way. And it's trying to climb back in my mouth, and it's doing all sorts of exciting things that I never knew a beard could do. So it's been the age of discovery for me.
My beard is not the one that does that. My mustache is the one that does that.
It's like the sides of the lips, right? Like the corners.
Yeah, it starts just going into the mouth after a while, and it drives me crazy. That's why I almost never use the mustache, when I grow it out.
I recorded a new video today, and it was as I'm talking, it's weaving its way into my mouth, and it's God damn.
So about Fanboy and Chum Chum. So anyway, I guess because your internet career has been very varied in terms of writing, animation, voiceover, things like that. Mm-hmm. I guess in the grand scope of everything, where did you get your start? On the internet?
So I generally internet for me was the dial-up modem internet, right? So
right.
The beep beep boop and mom get off the phone.
Trying to play Cartoon Network games.
Yeah, right. So that was my first dabbling with the internet, and I definitely took to it very, very quickly. I was I'd say 11, I'm guessing. I can't remember the exact age I was, but I know when my dad first got it. My dad's always been very enthusiastic about technology. And so it was the moment it came out, he got it, and so I would use this was back when the internet as a whole, it's go to games.com to play games and go to chat.com. It was that's how many websites there were at the time. It's super early days, and I definitely found my foot in chat rooms, and I was just chat to strangers all the time, and that's obviously a recipe for disaster, but fortunately it never backfired too badly on me. I think everyone at the same time was on that same learning curve of what to do and what not to do on it online. So basically internet has been sort of running concurrently with my life for almost 2 decades now. Around the early 2000s I began doing a webcomic, and it wasn't very good, but I tried, and I ran that for a long time, and eventually and it's kind of here where I I experimented with my comedy voice, and I never really found it at the time, really, because I was always aping other people's styles, never ripping off jokes outright, but clearly lifting jokes from, or not jokes, but lifting joke structures from places and stuff. So I was still kind of figuring out that voice. And then I started dabbling in a more risque webcomic called Eddache. And there I began doing very absurdist stuff, but then I started trying to, inspired by other webcomics at the time, I started making my jokes raunchier and stuff, and it's definitely it's the stuff that hasn't aged very well, because I was just being this very try-hard edgelord.
Raunchy, old, early 2000s, edgy kind of humor.
Yeah, sort of prime South Park era, but not South Park era in terms of the people who write the show and who are actually smart. The kids who are watching South Park, the ones who are stupid as shit, and think
the ones who think that they're writing like South Park.
Yeah,
kind of
the ones who are Cartman said the Jews joke. I'm going to say a Jew joke now, and it's that's not good, because it's obviously they write it with more context. Matt Stone is Jewish, so it's like it's like somebody else trying to repeat a joke. Let's just say by like a different race or a different gender or a different sexuality, and thinking it's okay that they say it and it's not. So I was trying to do that, and not good. But it did eventually lead me into doing cartoons. So I would start animating. So I got Flash 8, and I began sort of making my own animations. And that's kind of, I think, where I started to get noticed. And through that, I started I'd go to like meetups, like there'll be like Newgrounds meetups, where we'd meet like a bunch of the people who run the website and like some of the top creators at the time.
So like Tom Fulp would be there, and like Ego Raptor and people like that.
Not Ego Raptor, because this was like in London. So Tom Fulp did come across for one of them, along with like a large crew. It was there like I would meet like Ed Gould of Ed's World, Tomska, DA Games, although he was just Diamond Armada back then. Like a lot of like people who like were just kind of, it was basically just doing it for fun. I think that was the definite energy that was going on at the time. It was just a lot of very enthusiastic, very creative people who were just hanging out, because it's like very rare that you get so many like-minded people in one place like that. And it was there I definitely made like a bunch of like friends, and like, I mean, it would seem insidious to call them contacts, because really there was, to say contacts would mean there was like a motivation behind it. It'd be like, if I get nice to this person, then it would advance my career. And it's like, no, I just like had a drink with this guy, or shared a drink, or hung out basically. And sort of through those sort of blossoming friendships, there will be stuff like crossovers, and like I'd voice in their cartoon, they'd voice in my cartoon, or whatever. And like eventually I stopped doing cartoons. I basically lost all sort of love and enthusiasm for it. It was such a draining experience to make cartoons. I think it definitely takes a certain mindset and a certain passion to animate like that sort of constantly, because I was finding it was just robbing me of my time. Like I was always fine to do it to begin with, but then like I got married, and I would take like I'd lose time from my wife, or I'd take days off my day job solely just to animate cartoons. And it wasn't as if the cartoons at the time were like worthy of the return. It's not like the cartoons were ever in like they're making thousands of pounds or anything like that a month. It was like it was fine, but I was weirdly dedicating so much of my time and energy to this, and in the end I just got very, very much burnt out. So off the back of that, and I think as well, now that I had like done it for so long, I began to actually carve out that comedy voice that I'd been missing for so long. And it was that I started to write a lot more. I eventually worked with Tomska sort of over his early sketches in Ed's World, which then led on to doing stuff for like Weeble stuff, and then eventually the Beano. And ultimately it led up to where I got to quit my day job and focus on writing full time. But in the meanwhile, like I always kind of wanted to get back into animating, and I was always like debating, like, is there a way I can kind of make a cartoon that's like easy to animate but doesn't look lazy? And like I also considered like what kind of like stuff am I watching right now, and it was like a mixture of video essays and animated story time. So I thought, okay, is there a way to combine the two together and have an animated character do video essays? Because I was originally trying to make just like narrative-led stories, but then I realized that YouTube isn't really like the most friendly place for that kind of thing anymore. So I thought, okay, well, let's make something that's more like the video essay format, and to sort of develop something that way. And so I still have my original copy of Flash 8, which I swear is like 15 years old, but it still works just fine. And because I ain't paying for animate. Come at me, Adobe. Like, there's nothing I can't do already in Flash 8. And that's when I began doing the Eddache series. So like before on my channel, it was like absurd sketches and I mean, I after I did the cartoons to begin with, I went into vlogs and they're bad, and so I started doing like absurd sketches, and they were like a couple of hits and very misses. So like I'd say a 60-40 degree of hit and miss, you know. I eventually found a way to like, I basically spent like several months, like maybe half a year, designing the Eddache character. While I studied other video essays, I also looked for like the pitfalls that they tend to fall into, and a lot of them is like it will be like one character in a set of poses that will like switch from pose to pose, and it's like that's fine, that's what they want to do, that's fine. But I know that that's a criticism that people have. It's like, oh, animated story times are lazy because they just have a character that has no eyes, or it has no mouth, or it has no face, or whatever, and like they don't even animate properly. They just like move from pose to pose. So I knew I wanted to avoid that. And so I have like this character who's built out of separate layers. But like the eyes alone have about 80 different expressions. And that's a way so that if I ever need to like have the character look sad, I have like a choice of like extremes. And likewise, his arms and hands have multiple poses and gestures. And it's my way of like, I'm still being like equally lazy with the animation, because ultimately I'm like, move the arm here and then have like number like 12 in the list of like keyframes. But so it's still the same level of laziness, but it doesn't look lazy because I did that kind of work to begin with, of like making sure he was loaded with all these like different expressions and mouth shapes and hand shapes. Even the hair can flop, even the jaw moves, and it's like it's a way to make a character still look fully animated when technically he isn't. And that's how I've been able to sort of maintain my work to date. It began with a video about how to solve Who Shot Mr. Burns with just the first episode alone, and that did very well. It's currently on 2 million views.
Oh my god.
And that was a sign to me that was like, okay, this works. After like 10, 12 years of trying, it's like, okay, I think I found the thing that works now. And that's kind of what I've been doing since. That's the lengthy career up to date.
I mean, again, with the Mr. Burns video, you said you had to watch how many seasons worth of episodes did you have to watch again?
So, Who Shot Mr. Burns is the finale of season 6 stroke the start of season 7. So I needed to establish whether or not Mr. Burns had met some of the prime suspects in all the preceding 6 seasons. And so that meant I had to like cross-reference every episode that Mr. Burns appears in, and then against every episode that Grandpa Simpson appears in, and Barney and Moe and so on. And then just correlate if at any point in those preceding seasons they ever interact. And it boiled down to, I think, about 52 episodes across the 6 seasons.
Okay, so you just had to go to the Simpsons wiki and see like how many episodes Mr. Burns appeared in, basically. You didn't have to go through the entire show. Yeah. Like at that point.
Yeah, exactly. No, I mean, even then, even with the 50-odd episodes, I still watched them at like 1.5 speed, so a general episode would only take 15 minutes to watch. And like, don't get me wrong, it was a good time. I'm watching classic Simpsons, you know?
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
Season 1 is a bit of a grind, but the rest of them is just like the golden age, you know?
Yeah. And I guess with the writing, because there's been a lot of stuff. There's been Ed's World, there's been Tom's stuff. And I guess, what was there ever like a video that was made with you that you had written where you were essentially at the point where like, ooh, I really like this. I think this is really good. Like, was there ever like that one video where it was just kind of like it clicked?
Interestingly, I would say that was probably the video I wrote for Ed's World, the first video I wrote. Which was Fun Dead. Actually, technically, there was another first episode. When Ed passed away and some time had obviously naturally passed, Tom began to reach out to sort of the circle of friends we had, and sort of said if anyone wants to sort of work with him on scripts, he'd be open to it, because basically he was struggling. He's sort of like balancing grief on top of like the mental pressure of performing up to a standard that, like, for many would just be impossible to meet. You know,
Yeah.
it's like people are always going to be looking for the seam, the change, and it's like there's nothing you can do about that. There's no way to meet that standard. It's impossible. So I think that combined together just sort of like had him sort of really struggle. So I originally wrote an episode that I took inspiration from the Mickey, Donald, and Goofy episode, The Clock Cleaners, that had like the three of them are just cleaning this clock tower, and it's just like sort of like the cogs are kind of fighting them back and stuff like that. So I originally wrote an episode that had the same principle of like taking Ed, Tom, and Matt, and mixing them with, you know, Donald, Mickey, and Goofy in that instance, and like they are cleaning the clock tower, but then there's like an aspect of like the clock tower also travels through time and stuff like that, and that was like the first episode I pitched to Tom, and it never got made. But that, I think, maybe showed him that there was an enthusiasm there. So he then handed me what he had done so far on Fun Dead, which was he'd only written like the first scene, and for the rest of it, he basically had like brainstormed jokes, and it was like he needed, like, he couldn't do the part in between. It's like he had the gags and he had the setup, but he didn't know how to make the characters talk to each other that would naturally lead to gag number 1, gag number 2, and so on. So I took it, and within a day, I had turned around a completed script. And we worked together to refine it, but it's like, I would say like 70-80% of it is the one that made it to final.
Wow.
And it was, I think that was definitely an instance where it clicked, where I was able to sort of assign each character like their own kind of little plot going on. You know, there's like Ed struggling to get on the rides, there's Matt with the toys, and there's Tom with the arcades, you know, and it eventually sort of culminated them joining up together again and like mixing up what they had sort of learnt along the way. It was also like one of the earlier starts of like us really rethinking the Ed's World gang, because I mean, ultimately it was Ed making a cartoon about him and his friends, and with him gone, it's like you can't force that to happen again. So we just had to sort of like, I guess, think of the characters more in terms of like archetypes. So like, I mean, like arguably the most solid character of the bunch is Matt, because he has that he's both like vain but also like dim-witted. But then like Tom and Ed, like arguably in a lot of like the older cartoons, you could just swap their lines around and it'll work just as well, because you know they both had this kind of like dry sarcasm to both of them. And so, but for like in terms of like a cartoon, that's not great. That characters could just be so interchangeable. So we had to sort of like, you know, the negative term for it is flanderized. Have you heard of that term?
Yeah.
So we had to sort of flanderize them a bit. Some will argue we went too far, and maybe that's the case, but it was just a way to like make these characters clearer and easier to write for, since like, you know, one of the principal party members was gone. So we wrote Ed to be like this optimistic leader, but ultimately he keeps failing, which I found like I found that to be endearing. You know, the fact that he tries and he's like well-meaning, but like it tends to like not work. And so that sort of, I guess it was just like the alignment of planets that all sort of like came together so smoothly and naturally. And then the video did like extraordinarily well. Like, I think, without checking right now, and so I could be completely wrong, but I think it's like on stuff like 30 million plus. It's like insane numbers, and in fact has like outperformed Ed's every other video, which is a bittersweet thing, because that was never an intention. We were never there to trump what he did, but if it brings more people into his world to like to see his old material, if what we do invites more people in, then like I guess that's a victory. But that I think was the time where it was like, yes, this is what I want to do, and everything sort of I had a lot of mentorship with Tom, because he's obviously vastly more experienced when it comes to writing sketches, and so when I sort of come to him with a sketch idea, he would like explain to me why certain vital elements were missing, and it's through like that combination of like, I guess a combination of just a gut instinct of what felt right, mixed with like Tom's guidance, and I just like an openness to learn more and understand why something I may have done in the past is bad. Like I had to I had to get over that, and I had to like lose any sense of pride. I had to give up any sense of ego, because like if you're going to grow and adapt as a creative, you need to like open yourself up to that stuff, and it can be hard. Like I've been in writing rooms for like TV shows. I mean, okay, that's a lie. I've been in one writing room for one TV show that in the end never made it, but that one tiny experience alone was a bit soul crushing, because it'll be like you offer out an idea and you sort of throw it out there into the ether, and then like it goes around this huge table full of people, and like by the time it's like spun around and come back to you, it's now like this beaten up mess, and it's like, what the hell is this? This looks nothing like my original idea.
Well, it's like the writing room in Robot Chicken is like 10 people, and I think they say they normally throw out like 40 ideas an episode or something like that, like 40 to 50 ideas for like 11 minutes.
It can be grueling. I mean, I once had a friend explain it to me that it's a lot like it's let's say you have a dog, but what they want is a cat, and you could like cut off the ears, and you could cut off the tail, and you can like do plastic surgery on the face. You can do whatever you want to this dog, but in the end, you don't have a cat. You have a fucked up dog. And so that's what I mean. You gotta murder your darlings. You gotta like let go of like it's hard. Like I say that like it's easy. It's so not. It's so hard, because sometimes you're like, I'm really proud of this bit, and they're like, let's cut it, and you're like, bruh. So it's hard. It's tough. And like it can be a source of friction. It can like cause so much like mental anxiety, because you're always trying to like, I guess, second guess yourself, but also second guess other people and what they think, and it can just be like, it can cause you to lock down, but you just gotta like press on, and like, as I said, with that kind of open mind and open heart, I think that's the only way you can like evolve creatively.
Also, actually, I went to the Edworld page to see how many views Fundead had. Fundead is at over 45 million.
For fuck's sake.
45 million, and it is the most viewed video on the Edworld's channel by 20 million.
Yeah, goddamn. I mean, I'm proud of that. Don't get me wrong. I am so happy, because, as I said, it was the episode that clicked together so well. It springboarded a lot for me, and I'm immensely proud of Fundead. It is one of my greatest achievements. But as I said, there's still that sense of like, but like the other cartoons, guys, watch the other ones, you know, watch the ones that Ed actually made. Because this was like the first episode that he had nothing to do with. There was Space Face, which he had written part of it, wasn't it? Isn't that what it was? Well, Space Face was actually entirely written by Tom. He wanted to write an Edward episode, and so he wrote this one entirely on his own, and he pitched it to Ed, and Ed gave no notes. He was like, "Yeah, okay, let's do it." And it was, as I said, the first time that Tom had written an episode entirely on his own. Up to that point, he had written his dialogue on his own. Sometimes Ed would say to him, okay, now Tom says this, and then he would say, no, Tom says this now. And so he will rewrite a lot of his own dialogue. But Space Face he wrote entirely on his own. I don't know, maybe Ed might have had one or two tweaks. Ed was a very tricky person sometimes to sort of he can give some quite harsh feedback. Let's put it that way.
Not quite a perfectionist, but close. I would say.
No, I think it's just more. He's just like he is quite particular, but he's also like sometimes unsympathetic. So he will probably shoot down an idea but without being aware that maybe your feelings were hurt by that.
I've had friends I've helped write, and they've been the same way before.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I mean, don't get me wrong, I love the man, but like that was an aspect of like, you know, working with him. And like he took a lot of stuff to heart. When he released the episode Movie Makers. I enjoyed it, but like I know I posted a comment at the time that was words to the effect of like, I felt the pace was a bit slow in this scene, but on the whole, I really enjoyed it. And then he, like, almost immediately sent me a DM saying, "What do you mean? Please explain.
What do you know that I don't?"
Yeah, so I was like, "Oh well, you know," and like, yeah, it was fine. But so for him to sort of basically sign off on an idea was just like, wow, okay, wow, great. So they kind of went full steam ahead, but it was unfortunately like midway through Space Face that Ed passed away. As far as I'm aware, he had recorded for the entire episode. There was obviously no voice changer element in there. He had recorded the entire episode and was going to animate the full episode. But he basically the midway point where Space Face Part 1 ends was basically where he had finished up to. Not quite to the end because Paul DeVorde had to take over and complete Part 1, sort of aping Ed's style. In fact, there's a scene in Space Face Part 1 where Ed, Tom, and Matt are at a doorway looking in to the cockpit, and there's like 3 lamps above their heads, and the lamp above Ed flickers out, and that's to symbolize that that's the moment where Ed's animation finished. And everything sort of like from that point onwards was Paul. Paul was very sweet on that. Like the plan was that Paul and Ed were going to basically like work together as kind of the Ed's World team, and like Paul had already moved country to the UK to sort of be a part of that, and he took it like extremely hard. For a while he would like obsess over like old Ed's World clips and like even like some of the old live streams and stuff like that, just to sort of like get whatever like material he needed, because like he took a lot on himself to sort of match up to Ed's standard, and it drove him nuts. But like he was incredible. Like he'd be all over these episodes and like applying those like Easter eggs. Like he had like, by the point we was like making this episode, he had an encyclopedic knowledge of Ed's World. We worked with other animators for other episodes when we learnt that it was becoming impossible for Paul to do this entirely on his own. But Paul helped us with the finale. He basically animated Part 1 entirely on his own. Well, he had help, of course, but like broadly he was the head animator. And then Part 2, he storyboarded the whole episode and directed all the animators to match Ed's style. And like with Paul is one of the most integral cogs of having Ed's World come together like that. There's a wonderful shot in the end Part 2 that has like this big panning shot where Todd is just like admiring like, wow, all the adventures you have been on, and it's just this wall that's just littered with references, and that's all Paul. He like just combed every episode for a reference to throw in on like a bookshelf or a picture frame or whatever, and it's just like that's just the demonstration of like his encyclopedic knowledge. He was I miss him. He moved to America. He works for Studio Yotta. He's had a hand in like, you know, Rick and Morty, Sonic Mania, the new upcoming Super Meat Boy game and stuff. Like he's doing a lot of stuff right now.
It reminds me of on the 2008 Clone Wars. A lot of the actors ended up becoming like big Star Wars aficionados because Dave Filoni, who ran the show, was like the biggest Star Wars nerd on the planet. so he knew like everything about Star
Yeah.
Wars. I would explain everything to the people that would play characters and give like their whole backstory and what planet they were from and like their connections that they knew. And he would like,
Well, someone has to know, because if they don't, someone else will, and it will be very pointed out to them.
oh no, I think that's what Dave Filoni had even said. Is like, if I don't know, who will? Like, that's the thing. Who like, they're going to pin the blame on me or pin the blame on the writers if they get something wrong. But yeah, I guess back on the older work you had done, because there was because you talked about Eddache. And I believe you would later turn that into a short series, like an animated short series.
Yes, so for a while I did animated episode of Eddache, basically all voiced by me or animated by me. I just did the whole thing, and it was definitely the evolution of that previous raunchy, edgy comedy. It got a bit more refined, but I definitely struggled with it to begin with, and I brought in a friend to help with the writing side of things, and like that began like I think a passion for collaboration, because writing on your own is one thing, but sometimes you can get sort of like get stuck in your own head, and you forget what's funny, and you forget what makes sense.
Yeah.
Like there's like sometimes you might write a sentence down, but you've like jumped a piece of vital knowledge in your head, because in your mind you've assumed it, but like for somebody else who's reading it, they don't have that missing piece, and so that doesn't make sense. So I immediately found value in collaboration. So when I worked with my friend, we it was so much fun. There'll be nights where we'd be like just rolling around with laughter over the stupidest thing, and but like it's just the nature of these things, like sort of like people grow apart, and so eventually like the series as a whole sort of dwindled and died, and as I said, I lost my own passion for it, and so in the end I had to sort of just call it a day, and on top of it all the episodes had to come off my channel. So yeah, I mean they're all still on like Newgrounds, and I think they've been like uploaded.
There's
on
a
somewhere
YouTube
else.
channel. I think it's like Eddache HD, where like they've converted all of them.
Yes, I have seen that one. Yes, that's great. Yes, I don't know what I mean. They seem to have just like changed the music and stuff in places, but like apart from that, it's basically the same as the. I mean, they must have just taken the Newgrounds, the SWFs, the SWFs, and re-rendered it or whatever. But like, yeah, great, good. There's missing stuff.
Yeah, there's been like it makes me sad when there's like Newgrounds videos or channels that just disappear because of copyright problems or like things that need to be archived, even if they're in bad taste now, or even if they're outdated in some way. I feel bad when anything is lost in some way.
I have been tempted in the past to like essentially erase history for one reason or another, like either it's in poor taste or it's just like a bad standard, it just looks ugly or whatever. But and to a degree I have had to. There was, as I said, in my edgelord days, there was one of those Eddache comics that had the N-word in it, and so I was like, I'm going to take that down now. And this was like years and years ago.
Yeah.
This is before all the current stuff going on. So like I definitely caught on of like, okay, no, that's not good. But fortunately that was never turned into a animation as well. God damn. Oh my God.
I think it's one of those things where, I don't know, if you're a teenager, it's one of those things where I find it crazy when people like dig up stuff when you were like 16 to try to cancel you for it. I'm like, yeah, but you were a teenager, and teenagers are stupid. Like,
in the cases like you're describing, it also doesn't accommodate for people changing. Yeah. And I agree. Like, when you dig up something that somebody did as a 16-year-old, and it's a clearly stupid thing that they have obviously never done since, like, that doesn't make it right in the first place. But I think there needs to be, you need to make that context, be aware of that context, so that the person could either, like, allow the person to either accept that, that was wrong, that's fucked up, and they should like apologize, or at least ways acknowledge why it's messed up. And like there's always the trick to a lot of apology videos, and keep an eye out on this sort of thing, because like people don't know how to apologize. It's like people apologize, they're not acknowledging what they're apologizing for and why it's bad. They're just saying, oh, sorry, PC Brigade came after me. It's like, no. See, that means you're not sorry. That means you're angry. Gosh, what we were talking about before we got on that? Yes. So yes. Whilst I did take that away, I think there's like a moderated sense of. I think it is important to keep around the historic stuff, even if it's ugly and even if it's bad and even if it's cringy and stuff, because I think it shows the evolution of a person, to show like this is where they came from, this is where they are now, and that sort of that journey, because none of us really come out like perfect people, because it's like the lessons we learn along the way, right? It's stuff like stuff we learn through being in the right crowds, being socially aware, having that open mind and open heart again. Like you learn tough lessons along the way. You fuck up, and I sort of did a Twitter thread on this recently, where like the problem with like Twitter and Facebook and social media as it is right now is that it's practically impossible to fuck up, because you get, as you said, like people dredge up shit you said when you were a 16-year-old, when that obviously doesn't represent you now. And again, they're not doing it because they care. They're doing it to like to get rid of you, because it's fun and games, quite frankly. And like, and obviously, as I said, like there are people who absolutely deserve to get pushed away, like the racists and the TERFs and stuff like that. They gotta fucking go. They cannot have a voice.
It's just when it's people who are like in their late 20s, early 30s, and someone digs up something like, well, when you were like 18, you said this. Like, yeah, but that was also like 12 years ago, and that's not like, relevant to the situation anymore. Like
that N-word comic that I mentioned before, like that I was like 17, I think, at the time.
Right, yeah.
And I'm now 30. How old am I? 37. 30, I'll be 38 this year. I am like more than double that age now. I have like had a whole lifetime of me since, and I am just a completely different person. Like that 17-year-old idiot, that's part of me and that's my history. But like, as I said, that's part of like the growth of a person. I had to do something stupid. And I was never called out for it at the time, I think because no one read my comic. But, like, I was never called out at the time. So I escaped that kind of, like, justified outrage. But I was able to grow completely as a person. So if somebody was to dredge up that comic now, like, I can hand on heart be like, I mean, yeah, I did that. Oh, it's also fucking stupid. But, like, hey, I'm 38 now. I'm, like... clearly a completely different person who would never dream of making such a stupid thing like that again. And I think that's also one of the hallmarks. It's like, if they did something stupid once, and then they just never repeated that, then I think it's kind of fair to say that was just a dumb mistake. But if it's something they've done since and recurringly, then like maybe there's something deeper going on there. It's a tricky subject, and it's definitely multifaceted, and like I'm obviously like glazing over a lot of complicated stuff with these broad sweeping statements, but yeah, that's basically the gist of it. I think it's just like people change, and so yeah, back to making animations and cartoons and stuff. So I did cartoons, and then I stopped liking cartoons at the end.
Wow, that took a trip right there.
I know, the journeys we went on, the friends we made along the way.
Well, it's like I guess briefly bringing that up like one more time. I think the best way I've seen that kind of material brought up was, did you watch the last season of BoJack? Out of curiosity.
No, I'm like only up to like season 2 of BoJack. I have a lot to catch up on.
Oh, the last season of BoJack. basically covers cancel culture in a big way, and they bring up the argument of basically why are people not allowed to change. Like, I think that it's the basically they dig up old shit, or they dig up recent shit, or even things that they didn't mean for to happen, and people try to cancel them for it. And again, they bring up the argument of like, why is a person not allowed to change? Like, why do they have to have this attached to them?
I think you gotta view the canceling from the perspective of like, what is actually trying to be accomplished here? Because, like, as I say, when it's a turf, the goal is to deplatform them. It's to remove their voice, so they can't keep spreading their hateful, vitriolic dogma. Whereas if it's like Comedian Bill, and it's like he has, I don't know who that is, I just made that up.
Comedian
like,
Bill Burr. Comedian Bill
Burr. I don't know if there's somebody out there with the Twitter handle Comedian Bill who's that suddenly like, what the? What did I do? You know, if it's like they dredge up the fact that he may have said, you know, the other F word that isn't fuck. Let's say he said that once when he was like 16 and stuff, and like, what is, if their goal is really just like, they are like trolls who are just trying to stir up like drama. And the thing is, it's like, it has definitely been proven that a lot of times when this sort of stuff comes up, it's from insidious sources, you know, like certain web forums who would be like, okay, you know, we're going to go after James Gunn now, so we're going to just come at him with this historic stuff that he's already apologized for, and lose him his job at Disney. The goal there was never to be like, hey, there's somebody making like pedophilic jokes, and we don't think that's appropriate for somebody working for Disney because he could spread that same pedophilic hatred. That's not why they're doing it. They're doing it because they want to silence somebody. They're doing it for fun. I found my point. It is whether it's in good faith or it's in bad faith. Bad faith is just like, I am just calling this person out because it's fun. Good faith is like, I am open to this person changing. I'm going to bring up this thing because, like, hey, have you acknowledged you did this? That's fucked up. And it'd be down to that respective person to be like, either like, oh, I agree, that is fucked up. I will make amends in whatever way that be, like delete the post or delete the video or make an apology, whatever. Or they can react with like, it was just a joke, lol, and be like, oh, well then, you're not good. So there you go. There's the weird summary.
But I guess with your videos that you've been currently making, is there actually a topic that you've wanted to do, but it was either very hard to really, like, it was hard to do research for it, or it was just something you couldn't really like do enough to really make a video out of?
Well, there's probably a couple that spring to mind. I had one video which I was angling it to be more like an April Fool's Day joke, and it was going to be called "Is Bugs Bunny Gay?" And the thinking behind it was the way that Bugs Bunny traditionally would disguise himself as a woman. Does that make him gay? Because that's generally like that's like a topic that other people would search for, so that's what I was kind of capitalizing on. And so I was going to do this bit of like, well, I'm going to like find like as many disguises as I can, and then I'm going to rank them based on like their effectiveness, whether it how tricked the other man in the situation, be it Elmer Fudd or Yosemite Sam or whoever. Yeah, how tricked are they by it? Do they fall in love with him? Yeah, I was going to have this kind of like weird like data system of like the effectiveness and the performance of the costumes. But then, like, and I actually have a recording of this where I was like mid-sentence where I immediately stop and gasp and realize, oh God, what have I done?
Oh my God.
And because I am talking, I realize this, like mid-sentence, I realize I'm talking about traps. I am talking about the derogatory term for trans people. I'm saying This male character is dressing up like a woman to trick men.
Oh no!
Like, oh no! Oh no! Oh no! Oh no! I am absolutely not doing this video. Oh my god! And then I burnt it to the ground.
Oh,
yeah, right. So I was like, God damn it! Absolutely not. Yeah, and it's still a subject I would like to approach, but obviously now not from that angle. So,
yeah. Oh my
god. Yeah, right. So that was. I'm so glad I'd rather I didn't catch. I'd rather I hadn't scripted it and then got mid-record when I realized. I'd rather I'd realized way sooner than that. But yeah, that was one. Oh my god. Video that just basically got ditched.
That's it. Wait, you said one. That sounds like there was another. Oh my god.
Well, I mean, no. I mean, there are other videos which aren't. Yeah, they aren't that. That's an absolute exception.
Okay. I thought you had like another moment of realization at one point.
But there are other videos that I would like to approach, but the topic is quite complicated and touchy, and I need to come at it. I need a lot of time, and I've never set aside that time to dedicate to it. And it's one idea, for example, is the moment I disagreed with South Park. So to go back to our discussion before about South Park humor, like a lot of the times, and I'm being careful about what I say, because like any slip up I say could be
the one joke. Was it like the one joke they did that you were offended by, or like the one joke you didn't agree with?
Offended is the wrong term. I think it's just more like I disagree. I just like, oh no, it sort of hit a wall in my head. I'm like, wait, no, I don't agree with that. So like, yeah. I'm being careful with what I say, because I'm sure like any slip up I say will like have a comment that's like, grr, I disagree. What? Hey, Eddie at this point said this and blah blah blah. No, okay. So, with most cartoon shows, the protagonists are generally the people who you are meant to more directly have an affinity with. They are meant to be a vessel of you, right? They are meant to like represent you in a sort of fashion. They can still be flawed in ways that you are not, but ultimately they are like the voice of reason. They are the voice of the writers. They are your voice. They are like kind of you in that situation. That's what a protagonist is kind of meant to do. Right. They're meant to be the stand-in for the audience. Things are explained to the protagonist.
The blank
in
slate.
turn are explained to you. Yeah. But as I said, those characters can still be flawed and unique in their own way, to make them individuals that in no way represent you. But still, ultimately, they are the protagonist, and you're still meant to align more with them. So, in the case of South Park, you kind of have Stan and you kind of have Kyle. They are meant to be like they're the protagonists. It alternates episode to episode, of course, but they're ultimately the people you are meant to align with. They're the voice of reason. Hey, I learned something today. Cartman, for example, he's obviously a lot of the times he's the antagonist. He's there to like instigate situations and make things worse in general. But Stan and Kyle are meant to be the voice of reason. So there was a episode, and by the way, all that stuff I just said about Stan and Kyle, I could be incorrect in their involvement in this episode in question. This is why I need to do the research on it. But basically, I was watching an episode of South Park that involved bikers who I think they're meant to be like Harley Davidson types. I can't remember the nickname they have, but like, they are meant to be those biker dudes. And they're going around their bikes and they're like causing a lot of noise and stuff. And so they get shouted at and called the other F word. And they're like, what? What? They get confused by it. And then it has them go to the library and they like read up on what this word means, and then they realize that it means like an old crone, like a nag to begin with, and then then they're like, so the definition of a word changes with time. Wow. And then at the end of the episode they embrace it and they go, yeah, we are. And it's like that, and like there's like a moral of the episode that's like it's okay. And I just remember like looking at that, and as I said, maybe Stan and Carl had nothing to do with that scene. I can't remember now, but I just know for that moment when the characters were like, the moral of the episode was basically like you can change the definition of words like that. I was like, no, I disagree. I disagree with that wholeheartedly. You can't just like up and decide whether or not a word is offensive anymore. You can't dictate to other people whether or not they are offended, or in fact they are wrong for being offended. You know, they could be offended. I mean, they could perhaps misconstrue something, and then that's maybe down to like the way something was communicated. Maybe it's communicated badly, or they have something else in their life that like caused whatever was said to correlate with that. But in general, you can't just dictate how other people feel like that. I mean, I work with, like, offensive comedy. I work with, like, telling dark jokes. You know, I tell dead baby jokes till the cows come home. Like, there's nothing wrong with dark humor. That's not the issue here. The issue here is that South Park tried to put out a moral that I disagreed with. And that kind of, like, altered my perception. But there is just this general sense that, like, you're always meant to kind of trustingly follow what the voice of reason or the protagonist or whatever, the moral, you're always kind of meant to agree with that, kind of unspokenly, because it's like they're all ultimately like fables of a kind. But it made me think, well, like, you shouldn't always agree. And I know that sounds obvious, right? You're like, no, you shouldn't always agree with what cartoons say. But, like, I think more so in cartoons than other things, you are always meant to kind of like, you're so guided through the arguments that are presented in the episode, and when it ultimately ends with something you disagree with, you're like, what? Hang on. It's either like you have to change your perception to align with theirs, or you have to disagree with it. And that feels uncomfortable, because it's like, hang on, I like South Park. I like South Park a lot. I watch I watch tons of episodes. Yeah. Why would I suddenly disagree with it right now? And I just remember that being like a weird moment for me. But as I said, it's to talk about censorship and the usage of words and offense. That's such a big, touchy topic that, like, I'm sure many people have like very, very, very like staunch stances on. That's why it's such a delicate subject for me to make a video about. Like, if I'm going to do something about this topic, I need to have it properly researched, you know, more so than I have explained to you right now. I need to know what I'm talking about before I commit that to a video, you know?
Right, because funny enough, I remember me and my friends, like, a few days ago were actually looking up the exact word you were talking about, because we were actually wondering, like, when did because we knew that it meant, like, a pile of sticks was, like, the original definition. And I remember we were, like, trying to find the origin of, like, when it changed. And we couldn't find the exact date, but we believe the origin changed sometime around the early 1900s.
For a word to change definition like that in such a way, it takes, like, generations. It doesn't take a comedian on YouTube to change it. Like, I've seen people who are like, yeah, I use the M word, but it's like I'm trying to destigmatize it, you know? I'm trying to, like, but if I use it all the time, then it means people will stop being offended to it. And it's like, no, it doesn't work like that.
Donald Glover made, like, an exact joke about that, where he said, like, we need to normalize it and white people just need to start saying it. We will lose some of you in the process. Some like that kind of joke, like, because that's like, oh, yeah. It's a very touchy, I guess, morally gray area as to how do you stop making something like that offensive is the thing. I guess that's the other thing about the topic itself.
Yeah, that's what I mean. It's a generational thing. Like, you can't just decide this overnight. It just doesn't work like that. And it really, it's just people wanting to be able to keep their precious word. You know, that's all it is. It's like, right. It's just white people want to be able to say the M word, and that's all it is. And it's like, I'm sorry, you don't get to have all the toys, you know?
What's the John Mulaney bit? the midget bit from the John Mulaney bit like a few years ago, where it was like I wrote the word midget for an award show, and they told me no, midget is as bad as the N-word. No, it's like you can't say the other word, so by default, it's worse. With the topic of I guess from writing Eddsworld stuff to writing sketches with Tom, is there like a major difference when it comes to writing stuff like that? Like the writing process when it comes to writing like shorter videos or things of that nature, like Ass Stuff or the Wizzo video or things like that?
Yes. So in general, with a lot of Tomska sketches, I can't necessarily speak for all sketch structure, but in general, like, what we will try to come up with is like there'll be the premise, the crux. So like in the case of Wizzo, it's like he's just trying to convince this one guy that he's definitely a wizard, and we will then try to like have this idea of an ending, basically where is it going, and the middle part, that's like the fun and games, right? That's the playground. Because It's like, okay, you've established the situation and you kind of know where it's going. But the middle part is where you get to, like, basically brainstorm all different permutations of, like, it could go this way, it could go that way. They say this, they respond with that. You just come up with a bunch of gags. And then it becomes a case of, like, okay, now we have, like, a bunch of gags. Let's pick the ones we like the most and then weave those into an order. And that's generally speaking how sketches work. We basically like Tom would call it like a mind map. It's like he would have a piece of paper and he'll write like in one corner the start of the episode, and then throughout the rest of the page, and it won't even be like top to bottom, it will like start circling around and stuff because it's like a map, as I say. It's he will then like we will start like listing out gags, and it's just a case of like we'll back and forth it, and the ones that we like the most will get written on that page, and then that also in turn gives us a vague like order and structure, and then that is just turning that into a script. So basically the talking it over and then the writing it on the page, that's really the scripting part. The script part is just formalizing that previous part. So
right.
Generally speaking, that's how sketches work. Sometimes ideas are more complete than others. So something like The Wish, for example, was one that I came to Tom with. Like, I mean, obviously there was parts of the middle and the ending that were rewritten, but as a whole, the setup, the middle part, and the ending was basically already in there. It was just a case of refining it and tweaking it a bit, and I'm really happy with that video. I'm really happy with The Wish.
Out of curiosity, what was the original ending? I'm actually very curious because I love that video. What was the original ending?
It was always AIDS.
That's a great out of context bit right there.
It always ends with the little girl getting AIDS, but it didn't have the girl saying fuck at the end. It had like it was meant to just, my version had a stop at asking the Make-A-Wish Foundation guy for infinite wishes, but it wasn't quite punchy enough. So then Tom had the idea of adding the quick fire nope fuck. Even like when we filmed it, Hedy, the girl who played the girl, she refused to say the word fuck. She just didn't want to say it. So she said funk, and we bleeped it, but because it still has the and the it still sounds like it. You'd never know. But she's saying funk in that moment. But when I pitched AIDS, it's like it began like a little discussion. There was even like a little like Facebook chat group of like other writers, and everyone's discussing like what if it wasn't AIDS? What if it was cancer? What if it was like polio? And it's like, well, we can't do cancer because that's still too like raw and, you know, still too there's obviously direct connotations to Ed there, but like generally speaking, I think most people know someone who has or had cancer, whereas AIDS is a little bit like less common. Not it's still bad, but like it's not as commonplace as cancer.
Well, and polio is so rare now that it's essentially impossible for people to get it.
It's like getting to like ridiculous of like, what if it was smallpox? What if it was the plague? And it's like, that's not funny. It's lost that bite. It has to be AIDS. It
has to be AIDS. God damn it!
Yeah. So we have to give the girl AIDS. Like that's what it boiled down to. So yeah. I forgot the rest of my words. End of sentence.
I guess is Astiff like the same way, or is Astiff? I guess because I brought up the robot chicken thing earlier. Is that like 40 scenarios brought up and then like 20 are used or something like that?
Oh, Astiff movie is such an entirely different beast to write for because, so like first of all, Tom is extremely protective of Astiff movie. He knows exactly what it is. He was once reached out by I think like an animation company of being like, yeah, let's turn this into an animated series, and he turned it down because it's like it's not what this is. This is a 1 to 2 minute quick fire animated sketch show, and it cannot be anything more than that.
Well, so I think even if it had robot chicken length, it was like 10 minutes. I think that'd be too long.
It'd be exhausting to make an animated sketch show that's that quick fire, where the sketches are like on average a few seconds long, for a runtime of 10 minutes would be exhausting and would probably kill everyone, like everyone involved. It'd be too much. So it has to be kept. So he has a very, very clear idea of what it is. But at the same time as well, he is always extremely conscious of like this one being the one that kills it. It's like a lot of like as much as we love making the sketches and stuff, the real money that is made is through Astiff movie. Ideally, it would be like everything we do, right? Every video we get would get the tens of millions of views, and every video we make would be the ones that we can get to put on t-shirts and stuff. But we've tried that, and it just every time it proves to be wrong. People only want, in terms of merch, in terms of views, people want Astiff movie, and that's okay. We can still give them that, like once a year and stuff like that. But we have to accept that it's the moneymaker, right? So if we make one that is the bad one, and it puts people off and starts this exodus, like that's our company dead. Like Astiff movie basically funds everything else. Like the sketches do not make the cost of making the sketches never make their money back, because there's just not that much money in YouTube. But Astiff movie, because it's the combination of like it's so like lo-fi in its animation combined with the multitude of views, it's just instantly the most profitable thing, on top of then the merch. So we have to be extremely careful about Tom has to be extremely careful as the arbiter of what makes it in or not. And so every idea is fought over with like incredible scrutiny, and it can be quite trying at times. Yeah. I've only been involved for the past couple, and we are currently brainstorming the next one. But it's just a case of like we were like sometimes it might be a case of like I will pitch half an idea, like a setup, like there is a dog, and then I leave it to Tom to try to imagine an ending. Or I will try to pitch him a idea that's a bit more complete, and then maybe after a back and forth it might morph into something else that ultimately becomes the thing that goes in. Or like 9 times out of 10 they die on the spot. It is quite a trying process, but it is, as I said, it is what kept us afloat so far. So we just sort of gotta persevere. I know Tom is open to more experimentation with this one. sometimes a lot of the comments we get when we put up like a deleted scenes video is people will say, "Oh, this is funnier than the actual one." Like that's something they say every time, and there's nothing you can do about that.
Right.
You could put out a like for like, and they'll say the same thing. But what Tom is experimenting with now, so like the deleted scenes are genuinely ones that like stopped at the idea phase. They were an idea. Maybe they might have been voiced, but ultimately they were never made. This one, he is open to basically making every gag, and then after seeing them animated, seeing whether or not they go in. Because there's been a batch that was in like the Astor movie 12 deleted scenes that he, in retrospect, wishes has gone in, but he, you don't realize that until after you see it animated and after seeing like a reaction to it and stuff. So yeah, I think his plan is to look at every gag animated and then make a call as to whether or not it goes in or not. So we still get a deleted scenes out of it, but at least there's not this sense of like, oh, I wish that one went in because of whatever reason. So yeah, it's a vastly trickier process because there's a lot of elements at play, and we want to get, and doubly so with this one because this one will be promoting our card game Muffin Time, because we will be looking to go on public sale with it soon. So far it's only just been a Kickstarter exclusive type dealie, but it's COVID has obviously slowed down a lot of it, but like it's slowly gonna get rolled out into shops and stuff. So part of the video will be to promote that. So there's more reason that it has to go right because like there's potentially a lot of money at stake. It's ugly when business creeps into creativity, and I hate it every single time. But when it's something like this, it's a necessary evil.
Like I say, again, thank you so much for doing this. And is there anything you want to promote?
My next upcoming video will be out hopefully in a couple of weeks' time. We'll be covering the topic of what happened to Goofy's wife. So, like, he has a son. Where's the wife? Where's the mother? We do an investigation and we find out. That's the next video. Check that out.
Well, and he technically has two kids because there was the old short. So that wasn't Max. That was a different kid.
Ah, actually, they might have more in relation than you might think.
Oh.
You have to wait and see. It involved me watching all 78 episodes of Goof Troop.
Oh my god.
Yeah. And that is not a show that's meant to be binged.